This is the Galaxy Note 10 5G. And for the past few months, I haven't just been testing it, I've been pushing it to the edge. Custom ROMs, newer OneUIs, CR Droid, even transforming it into a pixel. And after all that, something unexpected happened. I didn't just analyze this phone, I started to appreciate it. 6 years after its debut, it still has a story to tell. If you already own one, this might bring back some nostalgia. And if you don't, well, let's find out if an old flagship still has what it takes in 2025. You know that feeling when you pick up an old device and it instantly reminds you why you loved it? That's exactly what happened here. The moment I held it, I knew this wasn't just some outdated slab of glass. It still feels premium. That nearly full screen design, the tiny hole punch cutout, it doesn't scream old. The aluminum frame, still smooth, still rock solid. The weight, perfectly balanced. But those sharp edges, that's where things get interesting. Ergonomically, it's a step backward. Back in the day, if you were upgrading from the smooth, rounded edges of the Note 9 or Note 8, this felt sharper, boxier, less comfortable, but undeniably modern. And if you think about it, this exact phone set the tone for every Ultra Samsung phone that followed. And then there's the button layout, awkwardly shifted toward the left side. It's one of those things you eventually adapt to, but it never really feels natural. Since this is the smaller Note 10, not the Plus, it's at least easier to hold. Design-wise, still a stunner. When this phone launched, it turned heads. And honestly, it still does. The black version I have is sleek, but Aura Glow, that was the one. Back in university, I wanted it so badly, but just couldn't afford it. There was something about the way light danced off the glass that made it feel futuristic. The center hole punch, the slim bezels, Samsung may have moved on from curved edges, but plenty of brands haven't. That says a lot. This phone set a standard, one that even Samsung, despite shifting tastes, helped define. It just goes to show how relevant this phone still is in terms of design. It doesn't look out of place, even years later. The only thing that really gives away its age? The camera module. It's plain, uninspired, functional, sure, but it instantly marks this as something from another era. Around back, you've got 3 lenses, a 12-megapixel main sensor, a 16-megapixel ultra-wide, and a 12-megapixel telephoto. On paper, still solid. In practice, well, this is where time starts to show. The Note 10's photos have that classic Samsung look. Colors pop, but the sharpness and processing, not quite on par with today's flagships. Images lean softer, missing that extra depth and crispness that modern AI-powered processing brings. HDR isn't as aggressive either, so highlights and shadows don't get that perfectly balanced treatment you'd expect from a newer Galaxy. If you're used to the ultra-punchy, high-contrast style of Samsung's latest cameras, you'll notice the difference immediately. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some people actually prefer this look. Less artificially enhanced, more natural. That said, if you blind tested me with photos from this camera, I'd still know they came from a Samsung. It has that signature processing. And after running countless custom ROMs with Gcam and stock apps, I can say this. Compared to today's bigger sensors, there's definitely a hit in detail. But if you're upgrading from an older phone or a budget device, the Note 10's camera will still feel like a step up. Performance? Surprisingly solid. I haven't run into an app that just refuses to work. Gaming, multitasking, everything runs fine, as long as it's supported by the latest Android version OneUI allows. And that brings us to the real issue with older Samsung phones. The hardware? Still kicking. The software? That's where Samsung was ruthless, cutting off updates just a couple of years in. And that's what pushed me toward custom ROMs. Not that I'd recommend them for a daily driver, but still, it says something. You might argue, come on, just let it go, it's old, and sure, tech ages. But this thing, with this processor, it still handles everything we expect from a phone today. Yet, Samsung left it behind at Android 12 with OneUI 4.1. And here's the frustrating part. It's not about whether the phone can handle modern apps. Look at the iPhone XR. It's from 2018 and just got iOS 18. Meanwhile, the Note 10, released in 2019, was made obsolete way earlier. That was just policy. No complaints now though. Samsung finally offers 7 years of major updates. Took them long enough. Still, with older software, you feel the age. The occasional jitters, the little unpolished moments, they remind you that something is off. But Android's flexibility helps. The core features that actually matter are still here, keeping it relevant. One thing I do miss? High refresh rates. Once you've used 120Hz, going back to 60Hz feels rough. But even at 60Hz, it's stunning. Deep blacks, vibrant colors, exactly what you would expect from Samsung. The only real giveaway that it's from an older era? Brightness. It's good, but step outside in harsh sunlight, and you'll see where newer flagships pull ahead. As for the hand feel, not my favorite. The sharp edges make it less comfortable, but it still feels premium. And since it's smaller than the Note 10 Plus, at least it's not as unwieldy. And the S Pen, still a joy. I don't use it every day, but just knowing it's there, having that precision tool at my fingertips changes the experience. And the Bluetooth functionality still feels like a flex even now. Back to the cameras. Portrait mode does a solid job with subject separation, though the depth mapping isn't as refined as today's models. The ultra-wide, still useful. The telephoto lens, functional, but with only 2x optical zoom, it's nowhere near the crazy periscope zooms we see today. Where does it struggle most? Low light. The sensor just wasn't built for the kind of night photography we take for granted now. Night mode helps, but don't expect the near magic processing of newer Samsungs or Pixels. It's fine, but you'll see the difference. Video though, surprisingly solid. 4K at 60 frames per second looks smooth, and Samsung's Super Steady mode does a good job keeping things stable. It's not quite gimbal level, but for casual shooting, it more than holds up. The front camera, impressively sharp, capturing natural skin tones without the aggressive beauty filters older Samsungs were notorious for. And here's the kicker, it supports 4K 60 recording, a feature even some modern mid-rangers still don't offer. Battery life, with 3500 mAh on my unit, it's still holding up well. Moderate daily use, social media, a bit of work, some doodling, gaming, and let's be real, wasting time scrolling gets me through the day. And while it doesn't have the crazy fast charging speeds of a Xiaomi, 25-watt wired charging is plenty for me. Wireless charging, also here, and not just for juicing up the phone, reverse wireless charging too. Does your old phone do that? The speakers, solid, clear, well balanced between the top and bottom, and immersive enough that I don't feel the need to nitpick. What's even better though, the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. This thing is fast and reliable, easily better than the optical sensors found in many newer devices. I love it. So, if I had to sum it up, this phone is still great. You could absolutely use it today. And if you're looking for a secondary device that doesn't feel like a backup, this is a solid option. But if you're like me, someone who values up-to-date software and that extra layer of security updates, then I can't recommend it. I just wish it had received modern official updates, because if it had, I'd daily drive it in a heartbeat. Now, if you're wondering why everyone is so obsessed with iPhones, why people think they're better than Samsungs and other Androids, that video is right here. I'll see you there.